Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios, Orlando, Florida, has been regarded as one of the best annual Halloween events in the country. A brand of a studio that's been the home of some of the most iconic horror movie monsters took the concept that was first laid out by Knott's Berry Farm to a whole new level in terms of quality, characters, and experiences that unsuspecting guests would never forget in their lifetime. It's hard to believe to where Universal Orlando has gotten, with a span of 3 decades and still going strong to this day, is nothing short of tremendous honor. The resort has gone through trials and errors, sticking to what struck a chord with people and what fell short, and adjusting with the times. Many of the horrifying creations have come out of that process, with Orlando being the most popular, and some haunted house tactics that have worked for them in the past, despite the art design team's desire to be distant from churning out houses based on pre-existing properties. They were able to still keep their fans intrigued. One of the factors that can be learned from this is that with the ideas that don't make it to the final stage in Flesh and Blood can influence the creations that do. It's an intuitive thing that can't be measured in the span of a massive studio empire that is more for the corporate interests. And the creative still make the Florida brand uniquely their own. Here are a few Horror Nights concepts that never come to fruition that is worth looking at to see exactly what was originally in mind before the events we've come to recognize have come to the public eye. Most of the insights go to the credit of Dr. Jimmy. From his channel, Dockimo. I highly recommend that you check him out because what he explains about HHN Orlando throughout the years is very interesting. So with that said, let's take a dive into the unrealized horror world that is Halloween Horror Nights Orlando. After the success of Horror Nights 10 and the icon slump that was Horror Nights 11, looking at both events simultaneously, the design team have learned something very clear. They could not go back to the way they created the event before Jack the Clown, as he changed the game for the following years. What the team found out was that if they have a character in the advertisements for the Horror Nights event, the public expects to see that character in person. In the year that the Scream Park went to Islands of Adventure in 2002, the marketing department presented the art and design team artwork what looked to be of an evil little girl. What the design team had in mind of getting around the limitation of not having a child at the event was this. They came up with a backstory where Cindy Bearer and her family in their funeral home have occasional tea parties with the dead people. The locals notices and becomes outraged, taking justice to their own hands by starting a fire in the house, killing Cindy's family inside. And Cindy, somehow alive, has donned a porcelain china doll mask, which would lead to speculation as to what happened to her. Did Cindy somehow cheated death, grown up as an adult child seeking vengeance on those who wronged her? Or is she a child spirit back from the dead? And Islands of Adventure, becoming Islands of Fear, would become Cindy's giant toy box, each toy representing each island that year. One being Carnage, another is the Treeks, the other, a human dinosaur hybrid, and finally, Nightmare. But, like the previous year, just as the scare zones and houses were all designed, Cindy had to be cut out of the picture due to sensitivity from the media about certain atrocities involving children in Florida. So the design team went for her father, Paul Bearer, and would evolve into Dr. Albert Kane, also known as the Caretaker, as the host for Islands of Fear, no longer Cindy's playground, but just dark versions of the daytime sections of the park. This would not be the last time that Cindy was considered to be the host for Halloween Horror Nights. For the 20th anniversary of the Orlando event, Cindy was originally going to be the inaugurated icon, now having pyrokinetic powers, performing a fire ritual, initiating a new age, with new icons and characters. But once again, Cindy's spark could not be ignited, and was replaced with fear. By this year of 2005, Universal Studios Orlando was undecided which park they host their Halloween offering. In the span of 3 years by that point, Halloween Horror Nights has been in Islands of Adventure for 12 and 13, and expanded with parts of both theme parks in 2004. From those times, the team could see the pros and cons, how the parks differentiate from each other in terms of pathways. When you enter Universal Studios Florida, there are so many ways you can go. You could go through Hollywood Boulevard, or go on the Avenue of Stars toward New York, or you can go on the bridge and be on Amity. Every single way you go makes a different experience every time. When you enter Islands of Adventure, you either go left or right and make your way clockwise around the lagoon and back where you started. With these ideas in mind, 2 concepts were created that fit with the structure of the parks. For Universal Studios Florida, the team created a female icon named Fate. A personification of wherever you went would be different every time you'd go to Horror Nights. The idea of a carnival-like game of chance, how you win or lose might determine which house or scare zone you might walk through without knowing until you get there, which would appeal to the locals. For Islands of Adventure, the concept was darkness, based on the traditional concepts of the boogeyman where things go bump in the night when you turn the light off. The icon would be a dark hooded figure with glowing eyes sitting upon a throne as you come to the lagoon. The lights throughout the park would dim down and darkness and the minions would swarm. So the concepts were shown to the bureaucrats to make the decision, and darkness made the cut. And the art and design team went full force. By the time they'd get the chance to build the houses, they received a call from the higher-ups telling them that they no longer approved the darkness concept. So in the span of 2 weeks, the team had come up with a new overall theme, which was a demented medieval kingdom called the Terra Quintus, where each island represents a different part of the fantasy world, each house representing the building of the blade that would be used for the human sacrifices that the Terra Queen would initiate. Then another thing thrown in for the advertisements would be a demented elderly lady that would become Elsa Strict, also known as the Storyteller. This led to the confusion of whether the Storyteller or the Terra Queen was the icon. But Elsa has appeared in the events since then, so it's safe to say who won. Somewhere around December, after Jack's Carnival Carnage rained upon the studio park in 2007, Michael Aiello written a 2-page draft of a story that would connect to the season into the following year. It is the story about a farmer named Nathaniel Crowe, who tendered a land where he attempted to grow and sell pumpkins, but to no avail. He meets Jack the Clown, who pays the rights to utilize the land to hold his carnival. And as the carnival went in all its horrific glory, Nathaniel was watching in awe, even inspired. Everyone who visited the carnival disappeared, all but Crowe. He asked the ringmaster why, and Jack responds with, "You'll see." And with that said, he and his band of carnies left town, leaving Crowe alone again. Enraged, Nathaniel Crowe bleeds, and the blood forms itself onto a flyer of the carnival he stumbled upon. The letters in red are as follows: "Forgotten are the ways of old, traditions blood black and cold. Up through dirt roots grow and burst, evils return, you'll see what came first. When ravens and crows made the night black, pumpkins were carved to keep the evil back. When the howl of the wind sends shivers down spines, graves of our dead covered in vines. When the black cats crossed paths and wolves howl, true witches did more than laugh and scowl. Your time has come, Nathaniel Crowe. Outside the box, you'll think, you'll grow. terror's traditions in ways you will demand. Halloween's true self is at hand. The blood from this letter returned to Crowe's body as he imagines dramatic possibilities of what the rhyme could have meant. In a vision, he hears Jack saying, "Think outside the box." "You will be my finest work," says the director. The storyteller says his name, the caretaker with a pocket watch saying, "Your time has come." He awakens to find himself in a field of pumpkins, all lit with carved faces, and around them are trees with red-eyed crows perched on the branches, staring at him. As Nathaniel Crowe tries to stand, the roots wrap around him, pulling him to the ground, and the crows soar to dig, claw, and peck at him, tearing away his flesh, replacing it with rotted pumpkin pieces, with the roots holding his skeletal body in place with them, and a lit candle was set in the bottom of his skull. The now reborn Crow would have become the embodiment of Halloween itself, with all the most sinister fables from centuries past all wrapped inside. For 2008, his purpose would have been to present Halloween in its horrifying form, to terrify the guests who would step foot inside the park. This origin story would have played out in the official HHN website in a month-to-month basis, leading up to the event itself. This obviously did not come to be, as the possible reason might be that there needed to be a move forward, and went with Bloody Mary instead. The idea of the House and Scare Zone tie-ins with the story would carry on with this icon, along with promotional material. In the years that followed 2011, a shift did change with Universal, with Comcast making the decisions of focusing on intellectual properties that worked well with Hollywood and bringing it to Orlando. Orlando had no choice but to go along with it, which may have also caused a significant change to Horror Nights and the brand's appeal. But it would not be long till Jack would return for the 25th year, and his henchwoman, Chance, got her own taste of the spotlight in 2016. Universal Orlando, by that point, was able to find the balance of their originality and their share of movie and television-based attractions. With the 30th anniversary under their belt, with the return of Eddie, the question remains, what will they do next? Will we finally get to see the possibility of icons and themes being accessible again? Who knows what will come? But the fact remains that Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando and around the world is the hottest ticket in the Halloween market, and it is here to stay, whether for good or worse. And long after you leave those theme park gates, it will remain in your worst nightmares.